It's not uncommon to see sequels in rebooted franchises. We've seen this with the Dark Knight trilogy, in which The Dark Knight served as the sequel to 2005's Batman Begins with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, following 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man. And now we come to 2016's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, the sequel to the 2014 rebooted movie. Has this aged well, or will this be a turtle bummer? Time to find out as we head back to the sewers once more for Out of the Shadows. For the most part, the writing is fine. The story really expands on what the brothers have done in the 2 years since the first movie, with them living with the fact that they can't reveal to the city that it was in fact they who defeated the Shredder and not Falcon. I appreciate that the Vern character is meant to be there for comedic effect, but do we really need a plot element that just inflates it? Just saying. There were more elements brought in from the 80s animated series, with the long-awaited screen debuts of Bebop and Rocksteady, the Turtle Van, the jingle from the animated series highlighting the episode title, and April's TurtleCon done in an Apple Watch-esque style, with 3D projections and a neon graphic of Donatello's 80s counterpart. Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you, that made this longtime fan very happy. 80s Donnie for the win. Shredder is much more involved this time around compared to the way he was played down in the previous movie, in which he was overshadowed by the Eric Sachs character. There are elements of his 80s counterpart that was portrayed by the late James Avery, who for my money, best Shredder ever. But it's more of a reserved dignity, whereas Avery's performance was of someone who would throw a fit if things didn't go his way. Whereas this version just simply looks to rectify the problem. It's an interesting plot piece to see the conflict that the purple mutagen causes to the brothers when Donatello discovers that the ooze that turned Bebop and Rocksteady into mutants could turn the turtles human. Mikey and Raph are yearning for the chance to be able to fit in and not be shunned and feared for their appearance, whereas Leo believes that their place in life is to work from the shadows and just accept it. Whereas Donatello appears to be neutral. He gets why Leo would think that, but at the same time he sees his other brother's point of view. And it's touching to see Raph sticking up for Mikey, as that's not a side we ever see of Raphael that often on film. So despite the rough and gruff exterior, there is heart to him, and that, folks, is character development. And now the part that no one wants to hear. There are elements of the writing that are detrimental to the movie, and it might be some of the reasons why this movie didn't do so well at the box office. First off, when you hear uses of the word butt instead of ass. Look, I appreciate that this is marketed towards kids and young families. I get that. However, consider the fact that this movie was rated 12 PG-13, then surely it would have been fine to have the use of the latter and not the former. It's just a small part, but it's something that I found to be jarring and insulting when you consider the first movie did so well with the writing without having to resort to Saturday morning cartoon writing. No offense. Also, let's address this particular elephant in the room. This movie did Casey Jones dirty. Casey's a character that had been portrayed satisfyingly in the previous movies and the 2003 series, especially since a lot of people cite that was a true to the original comic book. But in this movie, Casey comes across as annoying. The character doesn't think things through, being a hothead, and there are only elements from the comics with him wearing the mask and having experience as a hockey player. There are moments where he clashes with Raph, but even then it's watered down compared to the fights they'd have in the movies and the various TV series. To sum it up, the writing has more than enough satisfying pieces that make longtime fans happy. But at the same time, some character aspects and dialogue could have been refined to where it would have been less jarring. Pete voices the de facto leader of the Turtles for the first time, replacing Johnny Knoxville, even though Pete did the mocap. Voice-wise, you don't really notice a difference. Pete portrays Leo well, with the conflicting issues of trying to get his brothers in line when they won't follow his command. Alan's performance builds upon his initial appearance in the first movie to where he questions Leo even more with his decisions, this time concerning the use of the mutagen that would allow them to be human, which which is something he and Mikey want. It's rewarding to see leadership qualities in Raffi present, even if you might not agree with how he goes behind Leo's back and use Casey and April as a means to their end. Jeremy is given much more to do as Donnie this time around, allowing him to come into his own as the intellectual inventor of the Turtles to developing new equipment and vehicles. He does a good job of trying to keep the purple-wearing bandana turtle caught in the middle of Leo and Raph's conflict. Mikey is basically a big kid that just sees the world from a very larger-than-life magical point of view. He wants to be able to walk in amongst the crowd and just be accepted, and to his credit, he's right. During a Halloween parade, that is the one time of the year that people wouldn't notice them. If you thought Splinter's screen time was downplayed in the first movie, then his screen usage is down even further. He's used in specific moments to where he imparts words of wisdom to Leo, specifically highlighting that he shouldn't be trying to make his brothers think the same, rather that different points of view make a strong team. Now, this is where the movie becomes fun. You could tell that Gary was having fun as Bebop with the energy he displayed not only in his human form, but also his mutated form as a warthog. Some have a shame to fame, they lost their head. Hey there fella, nice to see you in a movie. Better known as Sheamus in the WWE, this 4-time world champion and 2-time United States champion fits in perfectly as one half of the goofball characters known as Rocksteady and Bebop. I did have concerns when it was announced that he would play this iconic character, given that his former acting background would be in the WWE, where, let's be real, some acting performances can be hit or miss. But when you consider some of the creative decisions come from a specific individual in that company, well, I need not go on. Despite that, Steven gives a great performance as Rocksteady, and I hope he gets invited back as the character in a future movie. Here's another guy that was clearly enjoying his work too much. I felt like he was trying to channel Pratt Frally from the 80s series, as I definitely heard the cadence and tone of what he was going for. Even though Brad is best known for voicing Grease Pit from Biker Mice from Mars, and as Bibbo, an informant to Clark Kent, and as the main man Lobo in Superman the Animated Series. I got the impression that she felt more comfortable in her role this time around, as her dialogue delivery felt more natural and the chemistry had improved with her co-stars. Even though he was given horrible material to work with, you could tell that the Arrow star was having fun with his performance after playing Batman Light for so long in Arrow. I could imagine audiences would have been irate if he had introduced himself to each character in the movie with, "My name is Casey Jones. I'm a security officer with a hockey past." He has good chemistry with Megan Fox to where it winks at the character's romantic stories from the comics, but it just glosses over it. I like Arnett as an actor, considering it was originally meant to be him as the voice of Kit from Knight Rider in the 2008 continuation series before he had to pull out at the last moment due to contractual conflictions with his contract with General Motors, and the car was a Mustang from Ford. He does his job well as an irritating joke character, with him acting like he's the best thing since sliced bread. And last time I checked, sliced bread is still great. Laura's performance as the hard-nosed police chief is impressive, as there is no nonsense with her character who just deals with the brass taxes of what she has to do. You might dislike her at times, but that just means the actress is doing her job. While I liked his performance, I didn't see the need to replace Tohiro Masamune, as he did more than a stellar job as the iconic heel of the Turtles. Despite my critique of the casting decision, he does well with the material he's given, and it's nice to see Shredder portrayed as the main villain and not be overshadowed by another character. I've not seen too many of this actor's work, but I liked what I saw, even if it is your bog-standard depiction of nerds in pop culture. A stereotype that hasn't been true since the original TMNT comic book. Enough with this bullshit. You're still not funny, Bay. Brittany replaces Minei Noji as the second in command to the Shredder, and to be real here, she's given nothing to do. She has one or two scenes with her in some action sequences, but it doesn't really allow her to contribute to the movie in the same context of Casey or Rocksteady. She may as well have been a background character. Judith Hoag plays Rita in a deleted scene where she is April's boss, and the two share a lunch scene together to where she says, "We're basically the same person," which was a nod to the fans, as Judith played April as the first live-action iteration of the character back in the original 1990 movie. The effects are on par like that of last time, so there's nothing really major to highlight other than I like the way the water glistened off of the mocap suits when they're in Brazil, which does give the photorealism a lot of credibility. One thing I will say with regards to the characters is that they have clearly shrunk compared to the first movie where the turtles were 7 feet at the very least, whereas here they've been brought down to maybe just over 6 feet. Which is interesting because dependent on what media you follow of the Heroes in the Half Shell, they have been depicted as being shorter than April, especially in the 80s series and the original movie trilogy. The special effects are what you'd expect for a major big budgeted Hollywood picture, from explosions to wall crashings and cars being flipped. It does what it says on the tin. The only time I would say that the visual effects lets itself down is the screen time where Krang is present, to where the CG for the character just looks cheap. Steve Jablonsky took over from Steve Tyler, and the score has a slightly different flavour on the basis of being a little more light-hearted compared to the reintroduction in 2014. Scenes that highlight this are when the brothers are at the NBA game in the nosebleed section, literally and figuratively, and when you see them hanging out in the lair. The pieces for the action sequences do their job, including some quirky moments where there is no music when you see Raph plastered against the windshield of the plane waving to the pilots. And to be fair, it's a quirky, awkward moment that sells itself without the music. And to the triumphant piece at the end where the brothers celebrate their reward of keys to the city whilst on top of the Statue of Liberty. Out of the Shadows grossed a profit of $245.6 million against a budget of $135 million, which is substantially less than the $493.3 million the first movie made. Today, Out of the Shadows' profit would be worth $270 million. So, not a huge increase. The movie received mixed views, citing that it was an improvement upon its predecessor, but was more geared to the 12-year youngs that go for the Michael Bay humor on steroids, whereas the adult would just cringe. It's probably why the 1990 movie has aged considerably well compared to this. There was a third movie planned with the cast set to reprise their roles, but due to the underwhelming performance at the box office, it was decided to reboot the series again, with the new movie set for release on August 11, 2023, 1 year shy of the 40th anniversary. Of course, depending on whom you speak to, the movie has been enjoyed on DVD, Blu-ray and 4K since 2016. I'm MJ Knight, and we leapt out of the shadows for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.